but it's about doing these things consistently. And now you begin to move out of fight or flight, right? You get out of that survival scarcity mindset that we typically live in. And you are so much clearer about your purpose because you're connected with your intuition. And so this is what's happening when you're pouring into all the parts of yourself every day, not just the body, because that's usually what we do, or not just the mind, but like when you bring all of those parts together, it's like achieving a level of balance and harmony that is not possible if you're only doing one or two of those.
Welcome to Impostrix Podcast Season 4. My name is Whitney and I am your host. Thanks for joining us for this episode. I am excited to jump into it. Impostrix Podcast validates professionals of color navigating imposter experiences and racial toxicity within their careers. And this season, we are focusing exclusively on pouring into Black women. How can we take care of the Black women in our lives? If we are a Black woman, how can we pour into ourselves? How can we receive the pour from others? So this episode is going to be about that and all the episodes within this season. So sit back, get your listening ears on. Let's get into it. And welcome back to Impostrix Podcast. I am your host, Whitney Knox Lee. I am here today with Dominiece, and we are going to be talking about soul care today. We are always talking about self-care everywhere, everybody, self-care this, self-care that, put yourself first, all these things. And for me, that has not been sustainable because I think I'm still in the mindset of self-care means I'm going to do something today to take care of myself. And I'm going to take every Friday off, or I'm going to, it's a much more specific activity or task that I'm doing and not an ongoing focus on self that I feel like soul care implies. So I'm looking forward to talking to Dominiece. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her before I allow her to introduce herself using her own words. She is a clarity coach and business strategist. She helps women entrepreneurs gain clarity, boost their confidence, and build successful businesses. And she loves working with coaches, consultants, and course creators. But the other thing is that Dominiece is like a yoga head, a yogi. But she blends kind of the somatic healing, mindfulness, breath work, and yoga, all of that, to create healing spaces for folks, goes into schools, goes into corporate environments, does retreats. So I'm looking forward to talking about all of these like components of the work that you do and talking about soul care. So welcome to the show, Dominiece.
Thank you so much for having me, Whitney. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Absolutely. So can you share with us what are your identities? What are the perspectives that you're bringing to this conversation?
I will lead with, it's funny because one of your questions was like, your signature says this. And like, I want to go there first.
Yes.
So for a long time, I struggled when someone would ask me, who are you? Or like, what is your identity? I struggled with like feeling like I had to box myself in to be a certain person, right? And based on whomever I was talking to, I would like say the part of myself that was applicable to that conversation. But typically when we're asked about ourselves and who we are, we name our professions and we talk about what we do, right? But that's just what you do. That's not who you are.
Right.
And so for me, I've been really over the last 7 years going on a journey to really understand and unpeel the layers to understand who I am. And so I will start with saying that in my signature with my emails, I say I am human, I am worthy, and I am enough. Because when you ask me about my identity, I don't want to be defined by a specific thing. When you see me, first, I want you to acknowledge my humanity. I want you to know that I am worthy and I don't have to prove that based on my role or my title. And to me, that is enough. And so that's the explanation behind the signature. So first, I want to just preface with that. And then outside of that, when I think about my identity, I think about the roles that I hold. One of the most important ones to me is I'm a mama. I have 2 girls, they're 5 and 8. And so I'm literally like getting to guide 2 little people that are going to become women. And I don't take that lightly, right, as their mom. And I thank Spirit every day for like trusting me enough to guide them in this lifetime. And so I'm a mom, and that's really the motivation behind everything I do. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a mentor, and I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. And that entrepreneurship piece means a lot to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I understand myself and my purpose now and where I show up best. But we're out of any of those like titles and roles. I think my identity is just like really affirming to myself and others that I am enough.
Yeah. And I was responding to an email that you had sent me, um, and read through your email, of course, and got to your signature line. And I was like, I am human. I am worthy. I am enough. Is this, it was a blessing because it's an affirmation. And it's, clearly it's your identity. Like that's what you have shared with us.
Yeah.
And for the person receiving it and reading it, because it's in first person, it's an affirmation. And so I loved that. And you're right. I did. One of the pre-recording questions that I sent you was around that, because I think for me, what stood out was I am worthy. And particularly in a business email signature.
Oh, yeah.
This kind of falling along the lines of like the out of office messages that are like, I'm vacationing. I'm not going to respond. Like, I love the ones that are like, if your email is important, resend it in a month when I get back. Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not going back a month to check my emails. And also the acknowledgement of like, I keep weird work hours. So I might send you an email, but because at midnight, but my expectation is not that you respond at midnight. Yeah. So these type of very like human messages to not only identify ourselves as human, but like other people as human. Like I recognize that you might have something important to tell me. So what I'm going to need from you is for you to tell me that when I get back. Just like resend when I get back. So I really, the worthy part for me was just very interesting, as I am also a small business owner, and thinking about how I communicate with prospective clients and with people that I'm working with around my expectations for how I'm treated. And what they can expect with how I treat them. And I just found it to be very powerful to be able to put that out there. Matter of factly, and I'm not saying it to you because you treated me like shit. Like, I'm just saying it because that's the truth. And I think as Black women, business owners, we are not treated with the respect that others are. And just today, I had a consultation with somebody who was literally making eggs, and like not engaged with me. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate, this message.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll say this really quickly. When you look at my signature line, that I am human, I am worthy, I am enough, it's before my roles and my titles, right? Like, before I tell you what my company or companies are, and, all of the accolades of going to Howard and, being an AKA, I list that. And that's on purpose. And that's why when I started with what my identity is, it's like, no, you're not going to define me by the work that I do. You're not going to define me by the university that I went to, or like these organizations that I'm a part of. Yes, those things are a part of me, but like at the core of it, like, I want you to recognize my humanity, right? Like, and that should be enough. And with the signature line that talks about like, I prioritize rest, and I want to honor that for you. And if this comes at a time, that's outside of professional hours, I can't tell you how many people have read that and been like, thank you for that, right? Like, thank you for that reminder, because I think that like in the professional world, we just like lose focus of that. One of the, I used to work for an organization, a wellness organization, and my supervisor, she's like trademarked this phrase, people first, professionals second. And like, that's how I lead my life, right? Like, I am a person first, and I'm a professional second. And because of that, right, like if I send you an email at a crazy time, I usually schedule them, but like let's just say I send you an email at a crazy time, like I respect your boundaries, right? Like I respect that it's late. I'm not expecting an email return that way. And so just like naming those things and really trying to embody in everything I do how I prioritize wellness and how I prioritize myself, like those are small things, but just by reading that you get a feel of my values and like who I am as a person.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we started our conversation before we started recording, right? And
Yes.
I was asking you how you were, and you were telling me, and then I was telling you how I was, and you were like, "Wait, can we talk about this on the
Yeah.
recording? Like, can we talk about this because this is the thing, right?"
Yeah.
So I want to start by asking you again how you are, and I'll tell you how I am.
Yeah. Um, you know, whenever someone asks me who I am, I really try to pause and like just think for a second because we naturally respond with, "Oh, I'm good." But you're not always good, right? Like you don't always feel good. You're not always in a good place, but we've just habitually just gotten into the place where we respond that way. And so even when I'm working with clients, I start all of my coaching sessions with the heart check and I'm like, take a moment and pause and like really check in and see where you are and let me know what energy you're bringing in. And so when you ask me who I am, like I had to for a moment be like, how am I in this moment? And like in this moment, I feel good, right? Like in this moment, I feel grateful. In this moment, I have things that I can celebrate about the day. But like in general, right now, I was saying like I'm going through a weird space of like feeling like I'm growing, evolving, and ascending, but also seeing that there are parts of me subconsciously that still have to get on board with that growth. And so there's friction right now, right? And I'm naming that like I'm good right now, but like this last like week or two, it's been a little bit ghetto. It's been a little bit rough, and it's been very emotional. So I appreciate you for asking me that, but I just want to remind people as we talk about self care, like when someone asks you how you're doing, whether it's personally or professionally, like just pause and really check in with yourself, right? Not just to tell that person, but sometimes we're busy, we're moving, we don't even slow down to know how we are, right?
Yeah, and we don't have to tell that person. We could
Yeah.
say I'm good, and
Yeah, for
then but
sure.
we're
For
checking
sure.
in with ourselves
Yes.
around
Yeah.
like, whew, okay, I actually just realized that I need to take a breath because I
Yeah.
haven't like breathed
Yeah.
breathed all day.
Yep. And it
Bro,
can be
no,
as simple as that. I agree with you. Like, you don't have to tell all your business, but like, yeah, I need a breath. You know, like that is enough. But like, pausing to acknowledge that is important.
yeah. So let's pause a minute and just get real. You do everything for everybody. But have you taken a moment to care for future you? Getting your affairs in order isn't just about wills or trusts. It's about peace of mind for you and love for those that you leave behind. Ideally, we should all have an estate plan. And if you're in Georgia, Wills for the People can help you out. But if you're not ready yet to create your will or trust, there's something that you can do that will go a long way in helping the future you. And that is to get organized. The I Plan for This Life Organizer for when it's needed is a workbook designed to help you organize your life with clarity and ease, making it so that if someone needs to care for you or for your affairs because you're not able to, they have all of the information that they need. No stress, no confusion, just a record made by you, about you. Visit willsforthepeoplega.com to get your copy because you deserve to be prepared and to have your loved ones prepared. Again, that's willsforthepeoplega.com and click on the workbook tab. Back to the show. So I was telling you, that I could relate to that, and that right now where I'm at is a converging of, I don't know, of all of the work, a converging of the personal work. So I've been through many seasons in my life where I am working on specific areas of my life, where I'm working on the professional area, where I'm working on some, I don't know, other momming. And right now, the season is focusing on self. And for the longest time, I have said, there's some trauma in my past, some childhood trauma. And some of it I've dissociated from, others of it I've thought that I've just kind of moved on. Mm-hmm. But I've wondered about what it means to heal.
Yeah.
And so the past several years, I've been talking a lot about healing. I've been getting very into somatics because I felt like maybe that is where I'm going to find this elusive healing. Or spirituality, maybe that's where I will find the elusive healing. And literally within the past 3 months, there's been a convergence of different modalities, different things happening in my life that is showing me, one, that I'm not clear. I'm not clear as to what healing means for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even clear about what exactly the harm, the trauma is, and how it continues to impact me. So then I'm also not sure how to heal from it. Mm-hmm. And what's been interesting, though, is that, so the things that have converged are, one, my therapist who is working with me using EMDR. Two, the podcast. Because, of course, this season is pouring into Black women, and I have made this commitment to everybody that I'm going to do what you tell me to do, which means left and right, I'm journaling, I'm talking, I'm moving, I'm doing all these things that I would never have done. And the third is that I'm doing some energy work with one of my guests, Nicole Lee, and that has brought me to ancestors and to spirit, and has brought up specific emotions that I didn't know I was carrying. And all of these things are coming together in a way that feels like healing, because it's the knowledge. Now I have a little bit more knowledge. And can move forward. So you were like, okay, let's stop and record. So yeah, it has been a transformative moment for me that feels extremely big, but not overwhelming.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, first of all. Like, that was so beautiful. And there were so many, like, as you were talking, just so many things were dropping into my spirit. The reason why I was like, let's hit record and talk about this is because I think that, like, in the day and age that we live in with social media, we're seeing healing all over social media, right? Like, people are talking about their healing journeys and all the things. And, you know, you have all types of people that are offering different healing modalities. And so we do sometimes, like, go on this journey, but we don't even know what we're saying yes to, or like what we're healing from. And that's normal. The simplest way that I think about healing is a return to wholeness. A return to wholeness, right? And what I mean by that is, I wrote a book called Hold Space to Heal. And I talk about how, like, you know, as children, we come into this world as the most purest versions of ourselves. And then as we begin to get older, we begin to get conditioned into the way of the world. And so, you know, we are taught how to think and how to believe. And, you know, people say things to us and we hold on to to those things. And so at some point, like, we get away from being this whole beautiful, authentic version of ourselves. And we start picking up habits and behaviors from family, from friends, from teachers, you know, from school, all these things. And then over time that continues, and we grow up and we grow older, and we've picked up all of these things. And if you think about it like a book bag, it's like every day you're just putting stuff into your book bag, and then you get to be an adult and you're carrying all this stuff that no longer serves you. And so when I think about healing, it's going back to that most authentic version of yourself, right? Like, usually they say by 7 years old, you are like who you are, right? So those first 7 years of life are so important for who you become in the world and how you see yourself, right? So if you think about healing, it's like, who was I before that 7-year-old version of myself? What were my characteristics? What were the things that I loved? What was my personality like? Was I free-spirited and I've gotten away from that? Like, you know, what activities was I interested in? And so healing is literally like unpacking all of these things that we've inherited over our years growing up, and like getting back to that most authentic version of yourself. Now, how that happens is many different modalities that can help you through that process. One of the things that I heard you talking about was just all the different modalities that you're using right now. Healing it's a mind, body, spirit practice. That's another thing that's important. And sometimes we just focus on one of those parts of ourselves. So like sometimes we just go to therapy, right? And we process through and we talk about the things, but we might notice that like we're not making the progress that we desire to make. Because yes, mentally, right, your mind is going through the healing work and processing, but your body actually holds the stress and trauma. Your soul is the place that holds the memories of those things. And so if you only do talk therapy, that alone is not fully helping you to heal. It's going to help you to understand and process the things, but the soul, the body also have to be involved in the healing process. And so when I talk about holding space to heal, there isn't much that you have to do, right? Like there are all these modalities, but there's not a whole bunch you have to do. You can literally, like our bodies are so smart where if you just give your body time to be still and to process, right? Maybe restorative yoga as an example. I found so much healing from laying on a bolster and pillows and having myself propped up. I wasn't moving. I wasn't doing nothing. I was just being. And in that being, all of these memories, kind of what you were talking about, like all of this stuff started coming up to me. And it was in the act of just being still that my greatest healing was happening. And so you don't have to do a lot. It's helpful to have, all these different modalities that you can explore. And I've explored a lot and those things have been helpful. But like someone listening to this at this moment can be like, I want to work on myself and go on my healing journey or deepen it. And they can literally just like get into a restorative yoga position. And that right there is like giving yourself the time to heal. The last thing I'll say here is that you don't have to remember everything to release and heal from everything, right? The mind forgets things, right? So again, talk therapy is helpful because it helps us to like bring up the things and process through and understand why it happens. But the mind will forget the things. It will suppress the things as a way of survival to get you through the world, right? As a way to cope. You don't always have to remember what happened to heal from it. So again, thinking about our bodies holding that, what you really want to focus on is giving your body the time and space it needs to begin to process and release. And so as things come up, you might start remembering, but not always, right? So I also just wanted to name that, like, you may remember the thing that happened to you as a child, or maybe it was so traumatic that you suppressed it and forgot about it completely, and you don't have to unpack it to heal from it, right? Like, yeah, you can go to therapy, but you can do somatic practices that will just help your body and your spirit to release those things.
Yeah. So much. Okay. I want to go to your body, mind, spirit worksheet, but not yet. But remind me.
Yeah.
Because what you said about, we need all of these things in order to do the healing. I guess I'm just going to go there.
Yeah.
Is my experience. So I did therapy for literally decades. And it worked to some extent. I am what I learned, intellectual processor. I need information. I can't process things without that information.
Yeah.
And so for me, it is like a bit of an excavation. And, I do not need to remember everything. But when I do remember the thing, whether that's through one of these, modalities, or whether that's through reading my journals from childhood, it allows me to correct what I'm thinking, because usually what I think happened is not what actually happened, and then move forward. An example being, for years, decades, since high school, I had a resentment towards my high school like crush, love of my life, because my memory said that we were still dating and he took another girl to the Valentine's Day dance and then broke up with me. I read in my journal. So, and this was like my first heartbreak, right? So after that, I was like, I'm not going to fall in love. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to have multiple boyfriends at the same time, all the things, right? But I read my journal a couple years ago and learned that I cheated on him. My little
Not the whole story being flipped though.
my little high school self had the nerve to go cheat on this person who was my first love.
Right.
Told him about it, and instead of being mad, he was concerned and was like, "You need a friend right now," which, whatever. But anyways, you need a friend right now. We are not going to be together. We continue to be friends. So a couple of years ago, when I read that, I reached out to him to be like, I'm coming to Seattle and I owe you an amends. Like, yeah. I owe you an amends. I have made you I have made a whole lot out of something that wasn't. And like to this day, we talk and, you know, we're good and all that stuff. But that's an example of like, I don't remember things correctly sometimes. And it has been interesting as I've gotten information, and I've gotten information when I have combined these things. So you had sent me in preparation for our conversation a worksheet to help me remember to do three things every day. Something that focuses on my mind, something that helps with my body, and something that helps with my spirit. And it's a 30-day challenge, and yours, I think the challenge is like do that for an hour. Do those three things for an hour total. But you told me that I could just do 30 minutes. Yeah. Because, you know, I'm a baby over here. And it's been difficult to do that. It's been extremely difficult. And I'll say the days when I've managed to do them, even when not together in succession, there's a noticeable difference in my chest. There's a noticeable difference in my throat. Wow. There's like a noticeable intentionality in my day. It doesn't feel like I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Yeah. I feel more grounded. And I've done this so imperfectly. In fact, this is our second, we rescheduled our recording. And the first time I was like, hey, looking forward to recording, except for I didn't do anything that you asked me to do. So instead, we just gonna talk about it. But even hearing you talk now about what movement means, what body, means, I'm realizing that I've done so much just with the awareness of put these three things together.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I am always like so grateful when I hear someone who like just gives this whole, process a try, because it has transformed my life so much. So just a little bit of like backstory of where this whole concept came from and like when I started doing it. In March of 2020, right around the time that COVID started, I was at one of the lowest places of my life. I was unemployed. I had just quit my job in December of 2019. And my original plan was to just have a slightly extended maternity leave, and I was going to go back to work around June of 2020. And then 3 months later, here comes COVID, right? Shutting the whole world down. So that plan got a bit derailed because people were getting laid off. It wasn't the most opportune time to be like jumping back into the workforce. I had a toddler and a 3-year-old and a newborn. Daycare closes down. So now there's that, right? My marriage was on the rocks, and so much on the rocks that we've since separated and divorced. So like when I say things were challenging, like we were in the thick of it at that point. And then I had just maybe like 6 months before said yes to a business opportunity where I took on most of the financial responsibility. Wow. It wasn't an essential business. And so when COVID happened, we got shut down, right? And so like, how are we about to pay this loan back? How are we about to pay these bills? Like all of that was happening at one time. So I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with any of this. Like I am someone who always tries to figure out a plan, who always tries to be the planner, the control person. And I had nothing, right? So I just got still. I started praying. I started meditating. And I was like, God, just please throw me a lifeline. And maybe 2 weeks into that consistent practice of just meditating, I got this download that said every day for the next 90 days, focus on your mind, your body, and your spirit. And I jumped right in. It was either that same day or maybe the next day. I was like, we in quarantine, I don't got nothing to lose, right? Like, so I started this process. Now, the first like maybe 2 or 3 weeks were really hard because I had never been consistent with anything. So it was just like moving through mud every day trying to convince myself to do it. But I kept pushing through. And around that 3-week mark, it started to become easier and I started to feel the effects of what I was doing. Now, fast forward 90 days later, I was a completely different version of myself. So physically, I'd lost about 15 pounds, but that wasn't the biggest transformation. The biggest transformation was I was a much calmer version of myself. Yes. I didn't feel as stressed and worried. I had a greater sense of clarity around my purpose and who I was and how I was supposed to show up in the world. And there was just like a stronger connection to my intuition. Mm-hmm. So this practice, right, like this daily practice of mind, body, spirit is literally like if you do it consistently, it will transform you. And I'll just really quickly break down like why it's so impactful. Please, so when you think about the mind, right, the mindset is pouring into your mind, being very intentional. So consuming inspirational content or instructional content. This podcast is a great example. For the people that are listening right now, you are nourishing your mind, right? You can also be intentional about what you're consuming and taking in. So I was on social media, but I wasn't, doing too much. I wasn't partaking in gossip, right? Like I wasn't around people that were complaining. That's mindset work. And what happens is the brain is able to adapt and change. So when you start feeding yourself positive things, right? When you start thinking positive things, when you start becoming aware of your habits and beliefs, like all of this is a part of the mindset, you start to grow and evolve and your external starts to change because you're shifting internally. So that's the first benefit. When you think about the body, and we've talked about this a little bit, we hold stress and trauma in our bodies. Physical movement is the number one way to release stress, right? The number one way. We do a lot of other things. We go shopping, we order on Amazon, we go drinking, we go all the things. And those things can help you cope, but like your body's still holding that stress. When you start to move your body consistently, it's like the greatest way to release stress. And what happens is over time, your immune system becomes stronger. I barely get sick now, right? Like maybe once a year and it's over really fast. You also start to develop a greater emotional capacity. It's like you become a more resilient version of yourself. So things that used to trigger me a couple of years ago, I'm stronger now, right? So they don't impact me as much. So that's the second benefit. And then you have that spiritual piece. And when I think about the spiritual piece, I think about this from two different ways. I think about cultivating a deeper relationship with myself, right? So we all have these relationships that we care about. You have a partner, you have children, you have friends, you have family, and we do a lot to pour into those external relationships. But if I asked you, how is your relationship with yourself, right? When was the last time you sat with yourself? Many of us wouldn't be able to answer that. So the spiritual piece is about, one, giving yourself time every day to connect with yourself, to connect with your higher self, your intuition, however you view that. And then the second part of it is connecting with a higher source, right? Higher power, God, spirit, however you want to identify. It's like plugging into the source of life every single day. Now, how that works is different for us. For me, meditation and prayer is one way. Sometimes I just go sit outside in nature. But I have a friend who is a biker. He's a cyclist, and he feels the most connected when he's on his bike. So that might look different for each of us, the way that we connect with ourselves, right? But it's about doing these things consistently. And now you begin to move out of fight or flight, right? You get out of that survival scarcity mindset that we typically live in. And you are so much clearer about your purpose because you're connected with your intuition. And so this is what's happening when you're pouring into all the parts of yourself every day, not just the body, because that's usually what we do, or not just the mind, but when you bring all of those parts together, it's like achieving a level of balance and harmony that is not possible if you're only doing one or two of those.
I experienced that. I believe it. And I am someone who, again, I need the information. I don't just believe stuff because you tell me to. Yeah. But I'm thinking about, so for, I don't know, several weeks, I'm still not to the point of actual exercise. Yeah. I'm walking, right? And we just got a dog.
That counts.
Yeah. I know it counts.
Yes. So kudos to you. That's movement. That counts, girl. Don't shortchange yourself here.
I just don't want people out there thinking that I'm over in spin class or something. Nope. I still got the gym membership that I do not go to. I don't go to the gym, even though I'm paying $40 a month. But we got a dog. We got a puppy. Her name is Nala. She's beautiful. She's a schnauzer. And schnauzers are active. They need to get lots of exercise. And she has a schedule at 11, she needs a half an hour of exercise. Because my husband and I work at home, we are able to do this. And so my routine turned into walking Nala for half an hour and then taking an actual half an hour lunch break where I'm eating away from my computer.
I love that.
And at the same time, I am doing therapy with the EMDR stuff, also doing some energy work. And the combination of these three, because it's not even like, I'm not necessarily like in meditation mode when I'm walking. Like I'm pulling a puppy along, trying to get her to walk right, you know? But there's something about the awareness of body that happens. And even like, okay, I went on a walk, now noticing that my calf feels tight. Or noticing that there's ringing in my ears, and now having the information of, oh, maybe this is ancestors talking to me or supporting me or being present with me. The realization, now I'm maybe a little bit sore because maybe my walk was rigorous, and so I'm sitting in my safe and comfortable place, which is a plush, beautiful blanket, and realizing because of my therapy and EMDR that soft places for me are the safe places, are my places of comfort. They are the hug that I'm giving myself. And like, so all of these seemingly random things, you know, coming together in a way that I have not experienced, because yes, it's all been separate. Like I grew up playing sports. I grew up moving my body and exercising. That was never I don't know, that was just a thing. It was a hobby. It wasn't a part of this soul care that we're talking about. And so I think I mentioned this to you when we talked the first time, when we did our pre-interview talk, that like, you are the calmest person ever. And so many of my guests, you know, that their version of pouring into self is working for them because of how calm. Like, I'm talking, if you're watching this video, Dominiece is here just like sitting so still, so like, and I'm over here moving around, you know, you can tell that her voice, you could tell that she's breathing, you know, and I'm constantly having conversations throughout, you know, my day with people who are not, we are not there. And so it's really fascinating to me, and it's been a huge blessing to get the insight that I've gotten from you and others around, you know, what this can look like, what you know, taking the self-care to the next level.
Yeah. So so many things. So the first thing is just thank you for noticing my spirit, but I'm actually sitting on the meditation, like my cushion that I meditate on. And so because one thing about meditation is like when you have a designated spot where you meditate, you drop in easier, right? Like the connection happens much easier because your body is like, oh, okay, we're coming here. Like now we're tuning in. So I record in the same space that I meditate, and that's intentional because it like helps me to connect more deeply with my intuition and higher self. And so that's a part of the calmness. I also wanted to name too, I love that you like said this and I was like, I didn't say that. When it comes to physical movement, it can be anything. It can be walking. It can be Zumba. It can be dancing. I dance with my kids in my living room some days, and like that's my physical movement. Like we just have a dance party. It can be going to the gym if that's what you love. It can be high intensity, like HIIT, you know, like swimming. So if you're listening to this and the gym is not your vibe, like that's okay, right? Like whatever feels good to you is the thing that you need to do. That feeling good piece is important because if you force yourself to do something that doesn't feel good to you, like people try to set resolutions and go to the gym, but their bodies don't want to do that. you're going to have so much resistance trying to do this thing every day. But if you're like walking my dog, right, like that works. I'm like, girl, do that, right? Like, so I want to just name that, like, when it comes to the physical movement piece, it gets to be whatever you want it to be. And then the last thing is that this process of prioritizing yourself, it doesn't have to take a long time. Like you were like, I did 30 minutes. And I'm like, that still counts, right? Like that still helps, because it's not the duration of what you're doing, it's the consistency of what you're doing that makes a difference. So the you saying that you notice that like your chest feels different, right? Like that's because you are releasing stress that we typically hold in our chests and our shoulders and our back. And so when you move your body consistently, it's like hitting the reset button every day. So when you walk, right, you're hitting the reset from yesterday's stressors. So now they're not piling on as much. That's why we end up burned out and raggedy, because we don't ever do anything for ourselves.
She said raggedy.
Raggedy, because we be like, I will speak for the fact that I get raggedy sometimes when I don't take care of myself. And when you do this physical movement every single day, like it helps. I love that you have all of these different like modalities that are coming together and like contributing to this soul care practice. Can we talk about soul care versus self-care,
Please,
since we're
yes.
here now? Okay. So we've already been talking about it. Like everything that we've been talking about so far is literally like soul care, right? When I started my entrepreneurial journey, I started out as a health and wellness coach. And so like I'm a business coach now, but my background is in health and wellness. I'm a yoga instructor, meditation, breath work. I play my sound bowls. So I have all of these different modalities. And so I ground everything I do in that. And I was supporting women in living healthier lives, losing weight, weight management. And I would be, reaching out to women on social media and being like, what do you do for self-care? All the time. Most of them are Black women. And they'd be like, oh, I go get my hair done. I go get my nails done. Maybe I'll take a nice, I go eat. I go out to brunch with my girls. What was another vacation? Bubble baths. Like those were like the top 5, right? And I was like, oh, that's great. But like, what have you done for your spirit lately, right? Or like, what have you done for your mind lately, And they couldn't answer. And so I started realizing like there is a difference between self-care, because we think about self-care as like a cute little robe and like a journal. And it's just like, that's great. But those things are so topical, right? Like those things are like putting a band-aid on the issue, right? It feels good in that moment, but you haven't done anything to nourish your spirit. You haven't done anything to release this stress from your body. So this concept of soul care is all encompassing. It's mind, it's body, it's spirit, right? Like we are not just the physical body. We have a mind, right? We talked a lot about that. We have a spirit. And so if you neglect any of those parts of yourself, you are not the most whole version of yourselves. Soul care is really an invitation to have a more like holistic care practice, right? And so I want us, as we are thinking about prioritizing ourselves, I don't want us to just think about the workout, the nutrition, what we're eating, getting rest. Those things are so important. But if you just do that, it's literally like you're void, like your spirit is void, and you feel that, right? And we try to cope in other ways to fill that void, or our mental health is suffering, right? And so we have to think about our practice of caring for and nourishing ourselves as mind, body, and spirit. And when you do that, the results that you're talking about are what happens, because I'm not just pouring into one part of myself. I am literally every single day filling all of these different cups. And now I can show up in the world as a better mom, as a better partner, as a better entrepreneur, as a better professional, because I have a greater capacity now to do that, right? Does that make sense?
It does.
So that's how I want us to think about caring for ourselves when we think about, what it looks like, soul care versus self-care.
I had an experience recently of needing to separate the three because my mind will take over. So it was a moment of, I can't remember. I think, therapy and energy work had happened like one day after another. And both of them told me like, don't process this, just accept.
Yeah.
Like my therapist said, treat it like wet paint. She said, give it a day to dry and then, come back and process. Like if you need to do that. Nicole was like, we're not talking about this. I'm telling you things and you're like, we're not talking about it. And that week I realized that there are times when I just need to be in one zone where, okay, I can set aside some time for processing this.
Yeah.
I can set aside some time for feeling this. And I can set aside some time for just accepting. And that, for me, I think healing is going to require all three, but all three separately.
Yeah.
So, for example, sitting with my body and feeling that my chest is lighter. My therapist was like, what color is the lump in your throat? And before I had like any kind of somatic awareness, I'd be like, what are you talking about right now? But I was able to just focus on my throat. And we were talking about humiliation. Yeah. And for me, a lump came up in my throat. And it was red. And it was glowing. And just focusing on that. She asked me, okay, what color does it need to be to cool it down? Yeah. So I said blue. And it was just feeling the weight on my chest, feeling like taps on my chest. And that is separate from then processing, realizing that the traumatic moments in my life were not actually the traumatic moments in my life. The trauma came after these moments. And so processing why that was and allowing myself to wonder, and to write about it. I hate journaling. Everybody knows I hate journaling. That day I journaled a lot because it was fascinating to me that my entire life I've thought of point A as the trauma, but my body was reacting to point B as the trauma. And feeling the disconnect of like, not only my own healing journey, but also feeling a disconnect between other survivors. Of like, I can't relate to your story because I don't have trauma from that. I got trauma from something else, And then the third of just the spirit of just accepting. And I was told that there is like there's a ancestral emotion of worthlessness. And shortly after that, like the session ended because my brain took over. Yeah. And I started thinking about, excuse me, like, I am here. That means my ancestors thought they were the shit and they were resilient and they survived and blah, 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 blah. Like, I couldn't just accept this information. And it took me days to be able to just be like, okay, at some point in my ancestral lineage, somebody had this extreme feeling of worthlessness that was imprinted into them and that was passed on from generation to generation, whether or not they believed that to be true, permanently or not. It was a moment in time that was imprinted and now is in my heart that I have to let go of. And so I say all that to say that, I'm sure listeners are similar to me where, like, we got to know all the things. We got to have all the information. We're trying to do all the things at the same time. We're trying to speed up this healing process. And yes, there are definitely times for me where all of it is combined. But more and more, I'm noticing that I need to spend specific time in specific areas so that it can all then work together.
Yeah. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I heard as you were talking was just this. So going back to the beginning of our conversation about what is healing. Healing is, again, a return to wholeness, but there's also a remembering that is happening in that process. And so it's not a, it's like we forget. Like we forget our dopeness, we forget our greatness,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like again, the world begins to tell us who we are. We had somebody when we were a kid that, you know, crushed our self-esteem and we forgot. And so it's also a remembering. And so when you talk about like feeling your body again, that is a remembering, because so many of us, because of our trauma in childhood, we disconnected, right?
Right.
Like unintentionally we disconnected. And so we stop feeling our bodies. We stop honoring our bodies. And that's why now as adults, going back to, so many people are walking around not recognizing how stressed they are, not taking breaths, and they don't even know, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I hold space for people and I'm like, at the start of the session, how are you feeling? They're like, good, I'm feeling okay. We do breath work, we come out of it, we process, and they're like, oh my God, I was holding all this stress here
Mm-hmm.
and there. And it's because you are so disconnected and we're moving so fast that you don't even know what you're holding. Like most of the time, we ignore all the signs and the ways that our bodies are communicating to us until it like forces us to shut down, until we get to that point of burnout. And so, a part of the healing process is reconnecting with your body, right? And starting to recognize, you talked about like the sore calf, like small things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we our bodies talk to us all the time. When you need a break, your body is telling you. Do you always hear it? No. Do you always honor it? No. But you're always getting the messages. And a part of the healing process is reconnecting with the physical body so that you can feel when you need to rest, and then finding a way to honor that. So I love that you talked about that, because that is also a part of the healing process. The last thing I'll say here is I would be doing a disservice to everyone that we are, you know, that is listening right now if we don't break down this like mind, body, spirit practice on like a practical level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
you're listening and you're like, okay, I want to give soul care a try, like let's
Mm-hmm.
see, what does that look like with our busy schedules? So I had been doing this for 4.5 years before Spirit started guiding me to share this out. Like, this practice is still something I do consistently. That sheet that I sent you is hanging on my refrigerator, right? So I am embodying what I am teaching. And when I was thinking about, like, how do I share this out to the world in a way that's easy for people to remember, I was like, okay, on average, I do about 15 minutes of mindset every day. I do about 15 minutes of spiritual work every day. And typically, I try to do at least 30 minutes of movement. So when you add all of that up, it comes up to an hour, right? And I was like, okay, 1 hour. How many hours are in a day? 24. What is 1 hour out of a 24-hour day? It comes up to 4%. So when
Mm.
you think about, I am asking you to
Wow.
prioritize yourself for 4% of your day, it seems doable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so I deemed it the 4% formula, because I'm like, all I'm asking you is for an hour, and you don't have to do all the things together. So if you're listening, you're like, girl, I don't have a whole hour in my day. That's fine. Find 15 minutes in the morning, you know, as you're showering, put on a podcast. As you're driving to work, turn off the music, put on, you know, put on something motivational or something you can learn from. Listen to something as you're unloading the dishwasher. Like, be creative about what this looks like. 15 minutes of a spiritual practice. Wake up 15 minutes earlier in the morning, right? Go on a walk on your lunch break, and that counts. So don't make an excuse of, I don't have time to do this. Honor yourself enough and know that you are worthy enough, right, to give yourself 4% of a 24-hour day. And the last thing is that if you're absolutely like, I can't give myself an hour, start with 30 minutes. And you've been doing that and you've talked about the benefits. So
Yeah.
literally cut everything in half. 7, 7, and 15. I don't want to hear that you don't got 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to hear that you don't have 30 minutes, because we will spend 30 minutes on social media, right? And so it's just like, we
Dang.
prioritize the things that we care about.
Mm-hmm.
Know that you are human, you are worthy, and you are enough, and you deserve at least 30 minutes out of a 24-hour day.
At least. At
Yeah.
least. And, you know, to kind of wrap us up, we started talking about self-worth, and I think ending with self-worth is important because, just as you said, we are worthy of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so much of this season for me and the listeners is acting on that worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can't just say it. I can't just say
Yeah.
I'm worthy, but then, like, go do the thing. Go give yourself the time, give
Yeah.
yourself the space. Whatever the thing is, or the things that we are going to do to pour into ourselves, because we are worthy, do that. And for
Yeah.
me, you know, part of this means getting over some guilt.
Mm.
It means releasing some guilt.
Yeah.
Because if I'm taking care of myself and pouring into myself, then I'm not focused on the other people that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've been spending the last 7-8 years focused
Yeah.
on, namely my
Yeah.
children and my husband.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. and it's okay. It's okay. We will all be, it'll be okay. Because I will say it's been noticeable, the changes in my life as a result of being more intentional and focused on my own soul care.
The last thing, if I'm able to just leave a thought based on what you shared, a part of healing, I talked about remembering. Somebody listening to this right now is feeling guilty and doesn't feel worthy of prioritizing themselves, right? They don't. That's okay. When you start this practice, right, this is where the remembering happens. This is where you begin to reconnect with yourself and remember your worthiness and all of those things. And so even at the start of listening to this and saying it out loud, you don't believe it, still do the practice. And over time, you begin to remember, yes, I do deserve this, right? I do deserve this. And then for the people that are feeling guilty, girl, we live in a world that for women, right, we're taught at a young age to be nurturers and to take care of everyone else. And if you go deeper as Black women, Lord, we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. Like, we do the work and no one acknowledges it. Look at the recent political situation and like how Black women are treated, right? And so oftentimes we don't feel like we can and we're able to take time for ourselves. And if we do, God forbid, then there is guilt. When I tell you I'm so unapologetic at this point in my life about my self-care practice and my boundaries, like I will tell my kid, I'm meditating. No, you're going to wait. Like, you're going to wait. I need this time so that I can show up as your mom and be the version of myself that you need me to be. So I often feel like we are at the bottom of the totem pole. I'm like, flip that totem pole, put yourself at the top. Because now, again, you have a greater capacity to show up as a mom and have more patience and, you know, not be irritable and all the things and stressed out and overwhelmed and going off on people. So like literally when you do this, you show up for everything in your life better. And the last thing I'll say for Black women, y'all, like I'm so passionate about this work because we have the highest health disparities. We have the highest immortality rates. We have the highest rates of childhood death and losing our children. Like my grandmother, she's an ancestor now, but she had a brain aneurysm at 50 years old. And when I was younger and I heard her story, I was like, oh, it was because she was old. But as this like mid 30 something version of myself, I'm like 50 ain't all that far no more. Like I'm closer to 50 than I am to being a teenager. And so getting to 50, never doing any self-care, having all this unresolved trauma that started very early on in her childhood, her body got to a point where it literally shut down. And so I'm so passionate. I show up with this energy, especially for Black women, because I'm like, y'all, I've seen firsthand, I've witnessed firsthand what happens when you don't. Right. Eventually it's going to catch up with you. Eventually it's going to catch up with you mentally, physically, like it will catch up. So we can't afford not to, honestly. We can't afford not to prioritize ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dominiece, for this conversation. It's been amazing, and I know that listeners are going to take something from this. I would love for people, after you've had a time to reflect on what Dominiece and I are sharing today, like, get at me. Complete the little Spotify question. If you're listening on Spotify, feel free to send me a message or something on Instagram, because I'm really interested in what happens for you when you put these three together. I'm interested to hear what you're noticing, and I think a lot of people will be happy with what they're noticing. Dominiece, is it okay if I make that worksheet available to listeners?
Yes, that would be amazing.
Excellent. So make sure to subscribe to the Validating Voice newsletter. I will send that out via the newsletter, of course, with all of Dominice's information. Where can we find you?
I'm actually going to send you something to go along with that worksheet and just put it all together. It'll give like an overview of what we talked about today for anyone that wants to try this 4% formula or 2% formula. So as far as where to connect with me, the easiest place is to go to my website, which is domrclifton.com, domrclifton.com. And on my website, if you look under the free resources tab, I have recorded like breathwork audio sessions. And so as we're talking about the body today and breathing and slowing down, I encourage you to download a free breathwork session, like poke around, and see what's there for you. Because my goal is always just to like share information and be a resource. And these sessions are like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, they're not long. And so check out my website, check out the free resources, and like do something healthy and beautiful for yourself today.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I love this conversation.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Impostrix Podcast. I hope that you got what you needed. If you're ready for more, feel free to go through the other 3 seasons worth of amazing episodes that we've put together for you. I want to hear from you. I want to know how you related to this episode. So if you're listening on Spotify, feel free to answer the question or send a text. You can do that through your Spotify app. If you're listening elsewhere, make sure that you follow me on Instagram at Impostrix Podcast. And if you like to text, go ahead, go to the show notes, look for the link for the WhatsApp community, because we just got it started this season for season 4, and I love to chat, so hit me up. Also, thank you to Chris at Digital REM for editing this episode. Until next time, be validated.